"Pretend to hug me," the little girl whispered, her voice shaking like it was the last thing holding her together. Those 6 words stopped billionaire Michael Carter cold in the middle of a rain-soaked New York sidewalk. If this opening made your heart clench even a little, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about desperation, courage, and fate. And trust me, the deeper this story goes, the darker the truths become. Michael had been walking along the edge of Bryant Park, head down, coat collar, turned up against the cold drizzle. Another long day of pretending he was fine, pretending he was still the man people expected him to be. Ever since his wife Hannah died a year earlier, life had become a blur of obligations and silence. The board meeting he'd just left hadn't helped. They spent an hour telling him how to honor Hannah's legacy while completely missing the fact that he barely recognized himself anymore. He needed airspace, anything that didn't look like the life he'd built and then lost. That's when the girl slammed into him. A little thing, thin arms, soaked hoodie, tangled dark curls plastered to her cheeks. She grabbed 2 fistfuls of his coat like she was clinging to a lifeline. "Please," she whispered again, pressing her face into his chest. "Pretend to hug me. Please, mister." Before Michael could respond, a man's voice cut through the crowd. "Lily. Stop right there." The tone wasn't concerned. It was angry, sharp-practiced. Michael looked up to see a uniformed employee from the Willow Creek Youth Center pushing through pedestrians, his eyes locked on the girl in Michael's arms. And in that instant, before he even understood why Michael hugged her back, not a polite pat, a full fatherly embrace. He dropped one hand to the back of her head, shielding her, and raised his voice with the steady authority that once commanded entire boardrooms. "There you are, sweetheart. I've been looking everywhere for you." The staffer froze. His expression flickered when he took in Michael's tailored coat, the watch worth more than the man's monthly salary, the absolute confidence in his posture. "Sir, my apologies." I thought Michael didn't let him finish. "You thought what?" "That you could grab my daughter off the street." His voice carried, and people nearby slowed, sensing tension. Phones discreetly lifted, recording. The staffer swallowed hard. Willow Creek reported a runaway. And I'm telling you, Michael cut in, "This child is mine. Back up." The man's jaw clenched, but the crowd was watching and he knew it. With a stiff nod and a tight glare at Lily, he stepped away and disappeared into the moving river of umbrellas and night. Only when he was gone did Lily's body relax in Michael's arms, though her fingers still gripped his coat like she expected someone to rip her away. Michael studied her. She couldn't have been more than 8, maybe 9, shivering from more than the cold. There was something in her eyes he recognized too well, a child's version of the grief he carried. "You okay?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Please don't let him take me back. Not yet. He thinks I ran alone." Michael frowned. "What do you mean, not yet?" She swallowed hard. "My brother's still in there." Brother. The word hit Michael like a weight. She wasn't running for herself. She was running to figure out whether someone she loved was still safe. He forced calm into his voice. "Why were they after you? What's happening in that place?" Lily looked over her shoulder as if shadows might have ears. "I can tell you, but not here. They have people who watch the streets. They have rules. And if someone breaks them..." Her voice cracked. "Kids don't come back from the quiet room." A chill ran through Michael that had nothing to do with the weather. He had 2 choices: walk away or step into the storm this child was clearly living in. The version of himself from a year ago would have handed her to authorities, filed a report, trusted the system. The man he had become, the one who'd lost everything that ever mattered, knew better. "Come with me," he said, making the decision before fear or logic could interrupt. He guided her toward a boutique hotel on 7th Avenue, where the concierge knew him by name and wouldn't ask questions. The lobby's warm lights reflected off the marble floor as they stepped inside, a sharp contrast to the world Lily was used to. She stood frozen, taking it all in like she wasn't sure she was allowed to breathe in a place like this. "You're safe here," Michael assured her. She looked up at him, studying his face with a seriousness far beyond her years. "Are you rich?" The question surprised him, and the softness, the sincerity in her voice nearly broke him. "It doesn't matter right now," he said. "You're safe. That's what matters." But Lily shook her head. "It matters to them. They only hurt the kids nobody pays for." In that moment, the elevator dinged behind them, and the doors slid open. Michael placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, guiding her inside, as thunder rolled over the city like a warning. He didn't know it yet, but those 6 trembling words, "pretend to hug me," were about to pull him into a world darker than he'd ever imagined. And for the first time in a year, something inside him wasn't numb. Something was waking up. If the beginning already feels intense, stay with this story. The truths Lily carries and the secrets behind Willow Creek are far more devastating than anyone realizes. Michael didn't sleep that night. He sat in the chair by the window of the hotel's suite, watching the lights of Times Square pulse through the fogged glass, while Lily slept curled on top of the blankets, still wearing her hoodie, as if removing it would make her vulnerable. Every time she shifted, he found himself glancing over, afraid she'd wake in a panic. Grief had emptied his life for a year, but now something else stirred, an uneasy sense of responsibility he hadn't felt since the day he signed his wife's foundation papers. When dawn finally pushed its way through the city, Lily was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the carpet with a plate of room-service toast in front of her. Except she wasn't eating. She was wrapping half the toast in napkins and slipping them carefully into her backpack. "You don't have to hide food," Michael said gently. She stiffened. "I know." But she didn't stop. It wasn't logic. It was survival. She had learned it somewhere that didn't teach kindness. He made her hot chocolate. He remembered that Hannah used to make it when she worked with kids at the community center, and slid the mug toward her. Lily cupped it with both hands like she was holding warmth for the first time in months. Only after she took a sip did he say, "Lily, you told me last night your brother is still at Willow Creek." "What's his name?" "Noah," she whispered. "He's 5. Michael felt something twist in his chest. "And you ran because you were trying to help him." Her chin trembled, but she kept her voice steady. "They said I was too old to adopt. They said families want little kids, not big ones like me. They told me Noah had a meeting with a family last week, but I wasn't allowed in the room. Afterward, he wouldn't talk. He just cried. Then they put him in quiet time because he wouldn't regulate." Michael paused. "Is that the quiet room you told me about?" She nodded, eyes fixed on the mug. "It's in the basement. They only send you there when you're too loud or when you ask too many questions. They say it's to help you calm down, but the kids come out different. Quieter, scared. Some don't come back at all." He had known systems could fail. He'd seen corruption in business, government, even charities. But hearing a child say kids didn't come back hit with a force he wasn't ready for. "We're going to see your brother today," he said. "Legally, calmly. I'm not sneaking into anything." She nodded, but he could tell she didn't believe the world cared about the rules the same way he did. He called Elaine Porter the one person who told him the truth, even when he didn't want to hear it. When he explained what happened, she sighed heavily. "Michael, I'm going to say this with love. You cannot fix the foster system in one morning, and you sure as hell can't walk into a state-licensed facility demanding answers. There are protocols. And public perception. You're still the face of Carter Dynamics. You can't be seen stealing children." "I didn't steal her," he said. "I protected her. There's a difference, maybe to you, not to the state. But If you're determined to see this place go as a donor, say you're exploring partnerships for Hannah's foundation, they'll roll out a red carpet. He hated the idea of using his wife's name as a tactic, but if it opened the door to Noah, he'd accept the discomfort. A few hours later, the car ride to Willow Creek felt colder than the weather. Lily pressed her forehead against the window, watching the streets shift from bright Manhattan energy to the quiet, struggling neighborhoods of Newark. "That one?" she whispered as they pulled up to a brick building that looked too clean on the outside and too dead behind the windows. Willow Creek Youth Center. Fresh paint. New security cameras. A banner claiming safe futures start here. A man in a tailored suit waited by the entrance. "Mr. Carter, welcome. Director Harrington is expecting you." She was thrilled when she heard the Carter Foundation might support our expansion initiative. The lie tasted bitter, but Michael followed him inside. The lobby smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. Bright posters lined the walls, pictures of smiling children that felt staged. Manufactured. Director Marjorie Harrington appeared with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Mr. Carter, what an honor. We rarely see donors of your stature visiting personally. Most prefer email. I like to understand places before I support them," Michael answered evenly. "Of course." She led him down the hallway. "Here, structure and discipline guide everything we do. Many of these children come from instability. They need routine." Lily walked silently beside him, shoulders hunched, eyes lowered. The transformation from the child in the hotel to this fearful version made his stomach tighten. A door opened, and a small figure darted out, colliding with Lily so hard he nearly knocked her over. Noah. Tiny pale eyes wide with exhaustion. He clung to her like someone drowning, grabbing a rope. "Lily," he cried, voice cracking. "They said you left. They said you weren't coming back." She knelt, cupping his cheeks. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." Harrington's smile faltered. "They're very attached, codependent even. We've been working on separating them so they can adapt better to new families." "Lily, dear, you know you aren't adoption ready." Something in Michael snapped. "Who decides that we evaluate based on behavior? Lily has shown difficulty accepting authority. She questions too much." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You don't want kids who ask questions." Her eyes hardened. "Only those who can thrive within structure." Noah flinched when Harrington reached toward him. That tiny involuntary recoil told Michael everything he needed to know. He saw the locked door at the end of the hall, the keypad, the way kids avoided looking at it. He saw the fear disguised as discipline, the silence that came from punishment, not safety. He kept his voice calm, professional. "Director Harrington, thank you for your time. I'd like to schedule a follow-up visit with my legal advisor." Her smile returned instantly. "Of course, we'd be delighted." But she knew, and he knew she knew. When they stepped outside, Lily and Noah both gripped his hands, like they didn't trust the world not to pull them away. Elaine's words echoed in his mind, but he ignored them. Because something had shifted inside him, something fierce, something awake. He had entered Willow Creek as a donor. He walked out as a man ready for war. Michael had spent most of his adult life believing that facts were enough to fix anything data strategy money. But the morning after his visit to Willow Creek, as he sat across from Carlin Guyen in his Upper West Side penthouse, he realized facts meant nothing unless you were willing to face the truth they revealed. The quiet hum of Manhattan traffic below felt strangely out of place, while Carla spread out files, printouts, and screenshots across his dining table like she was reconstructing a crime scene. "I've only had 24 hours, Carla said, tapping a stack of folders. "But I've already found more red flags than I've seen in some criminal investigations." And Michael, I've worked cases involving trafficking fraud and abusive residential programs. This one, it's bad." Lily sat on the sofa nearby, knees pulled to her chest, quietly coloring. But she wasn't drawing flowers or animals. She was drawing doors. Small rectangular doors with a single window at the top and a keypad beside them. Dozens of them. Michael glanced at the pages Carla laid out. "Walk me through it." Willow Creek files show a suspicious number of failed or terminated adoptions, she said. Kids flagged as behavioral problems right before placement kids who'd been stable for months. After that, the high-need classification doubles their funding. Then there's the medical logs. Sedatives used far more often than their roster should justify. She slid him a spreadsheet. "Here, look at the dates. Every time a child is reclassified as high need, the state funding spikes. Someone is profiting from keeping these kids unadoptable." Michael stared at the printed rows, anger rising like a tide. That director, Harrington. She knew exactly what she was doing. Carla nodded. "But the money is only part of it. Kids disappear from their records every few months. No adoption forms, no transfer paperwork, just relocated to therapeutic program with no location listed." Lily stopped coloring. She didn't look up, but her voice was very small. "Those are the kids who didn't come back." The room went still. Carla knelt beside her gently. "Sweetheart, could you tell me about that?" "Only what you want to share." Lily hesitated, pressing the crayon into the page so hard it snapped in half. They'd take them at night. Not the daytime staff, different people. They wore dark jackets. They didn't talk to us. Mrs. Harrington would take the kid downstairs first. She said they were going to meet a special family. Michael felt cold creep up his spine. "And did they?" Lily shook her head. "No one ever saw them again." "Noah said he heard screaming once. I told him it was probably a bad dream, but I don't think it was." Carla set a comforting hand on her back. "You're being very brave, Lily." The girl took a shaky breath. "The quiet room is where they send you before you disappear." She lowered her voice even further. "It's where they try to break you until you stop fighting." Michael closed his eyes for a moment. It wasn't just abuse. It wasn't just neglect. Something systematic was happening. Something calculated. And he had only seen the surface. That afternoon, everything escalated. A pounding knock shook the penthouse door. Michael opened it to find 2 uniformed officers and a woman holding a CPS badge. Denise Clark. Early 40s, crisp suit expression, strained with moral certainty. "Mr. Carter," she said, "we're here because Willow Creek Youth Center has reported a missing child. We have probable cause to believe you're interfering with lawful custody. We need to speak with Lily immediately." Lily darted behind him, trembling. Michael stepped forward, blocking their entrance. "She's safe here. You're not taking her anywhere without a court order." Denise sighed. "You're a public figure. I respect that this might be emotional, but this girl belongs in a licensed facility, not with a man she met on the street." A billionaire playing hero is not a legal guardian. She ran because she was terrified, Michael said sharply. "Maybe start by asking why that is." "That's not your decision to make," she countered. "Move aside." Carla, who had been reviewing files at the table, stood and flashed her private investigator license. Actually, under New York law, he has every right to request counsel and decline voluntary interviews for the child until we complete a safety assessment. And based on her injuries and statements, Willow Creek should already be under review. Denise stiffened but didn't retreat. "Michael, the more you resist, the worse this looks. The state doesn't take kindly to wealthy men involving themselves in vulnerable children's lives without oversight." Michael pulled out the evidence. Carla had compiled incident logs, financial inconsistencies, staffing violations. then explain this. Explain why children at Willow Creek keep getting reclassified as behavioral cases right before adoption. Explain why some vanish from the system entirely. The officers exchanged glances. Denise didn't answer. Instead, Lily stepped forward, voice shaking. "You want to know what happens there, I'll tell you." She pointed at the drawings scattered on the table. "Those are quiet room doors. They keep you there until you stop crying. Noah was there 3 times, and the last kid they took downstairs didn't come back. They said he was adopted, but it was nighttime. Families don't come at night." Something shifted in the room. The officer's expression softened. Denise's posture faltered. Carla added quietly, "We have enough for a formal report to the state attorney's office, and we've contacted an FBI liaison who specializes in child exploitation cases." Denise exhaled slowly, the certainty draining from her face. "If what this child is saying is true, this is bigger than my department." Michael crouched beside Lily. "You did the right thing speaking up. None of this is your fault." Lily wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "Are they going to take me away?" "No," he said with a certainty he didn't have 24 hours ago. "I won't let that happen." Denise hesitated at the door before leaving. "Mr. Carter, keep her safe tonight. Someone from Federal Services will contact you within hours." As the door shut, Lily climbed into the chair beside Michael, small hands resting on a drawing of the quiet room. She whispered, "I remember more. The kids who didn't come back. I know their names." Michael looked at Carla, then at the evidence spread across the table. He understood now that saving Lily and Noah wasn't the end goal. This was only the beginning of exposing something far more dangerous, something that counted on people like him staying silent. Michael had spent the first half of his life building an empire, but nothing, not boardroom battles, not billion-dollar negotiations, had prepared him for the war he was stepping into now. This wasn't a hostile takeover or a market disruption. It was a fight for children who had been forgotten, silenced, and pushed into darkness by a system meant to protect them. By the next morning, his penthouse had become an improvised command center. Screens glowed with spreadsheets, maps, digital files, and scanned records Carla had dug up overnight. She was still in yesterday's clothes, a half-finished cup of coffee beside her, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. "Michael," she said as he approached, "I got a call from the FBI liaison agent, Jordan Pike. He wants to meet in 1 hour. He read the summary of Lily's testimony. He says it matches patterns from another investigation they've been tracking." Michael took a breath. The air felt heavier than the penthouse could hold. "So Willow Creek isn't alone." "No," Carla said, "not even close." He looked across the room at Lily and Noah sitting on the carpet building a small city out of wooden blocks. Noah hadn't spoken much since arriving, but he copied every move his sister made. When Lily placed a block, he placed one. When she looked up to check on Michael, he did too. They trusted him, and trust he knew was a debt you paid with action. Agent Pike arrived exactly on the hour, a tall man in his 50s silver hair clipped short, wearing the expression of someone who's seen too much and has no patience for excuses. He introduced himself, sat down, and got straight to the point. "I've reviewed your investigator's evidence," Pike said, tapping a thick folder. "If even half of this holds, you're looking at widespread corruption and possible trafficking. What I need from you is cooperation, documentation, and restraint." "Restraint?" Michael raised an eyebrow. Pike nodded. "You're a wealthy, high-profile figure. If you go public too early, these people will scatter. We've been tracking similar facilities for months. They move fast when threatened." Michael leaned forward, voice low. "They are hurting children. Hurting them in ways I can barely wrap my mind around." And you want me to stay quiet? I want you to help us build a case that shuts down every place like Willow Creek Pike said calmly. One viral interview won't do that. Evidence will. Carla slid a file across the table. We can give you evidence. Lily remembers names, dates, which kids disappeared. I've already matched some of them to missing minors from other counties. Pike flipped through the documents, his expression tightening. Good work. Very good work. Then he looked directly at Michael. But we need more. Financial trails, staff connections, internal logs, and most importantly, full statements from Lily and Noah when they're ready. Michael glanced toward the children. They've been through enough. And if they can help save other kids, Pike said softly, they'll never have to wonder if they could have stopped something terrible. The truth of that settled in the room like a weight. At noon, Michael called a board meeting, his first in months. Executives appeared on screen surprised to see him energized instead of hollow. He didn't explain everything, he only told them what mattered. Effective today, he said, I'm allocating $50 million to create a new division under the Carter Foundation focused on child safety investigative support and emergency relocation programs. His CFO blinked. That's Michael. That's a large number to commit without. It's the right number, he said, voice firm, the right cause, and I'm not asking for permission. The vote was unanimous within seconds. While the board approved the funding, Carla and Pike began coordinating with federal analysts to trace Willow Creek's financial networks. The deeper they dug, the darker everything became. Multiple facilities linked to the same donors. Shell companies funneling money into youth development programs. Out-of-state transfers with no documentation. Staff members who had worked at 3, sometimes 4, troubled facilities in a row. Carla slammed a file shut. This is organized, sophisticated. They hide behind bureaucracy and loopholes. They count on people not caring enough to push back. Michael stood at the window overlooking the city cars inching along, people hurrying on sidewalks, skyscrapers gleaming under winter sunlight. For years he had built things, software systems, financial platforms, innovations that changed industries. But none of it felt as urgent as necessary as this crusade. We'll push back, he said, harder than they've ever been pushed. That evening, he made the call Pike had warned him to postpone, but Michael wasn't asking permission. He reached out to a journalist he trusted, someone with a reputation for exposing broken institutions, Dana Ruiz from the New York Sentinel. Dana, he said when she answered, I can't give you everything yet, but I can give you enough. I can give you the beginning of a story the country needs to hear. There was a pause. Then her voice shifted into the tone of someone sensing fire beneath the floorboards. How soon can we meet tonight? After hanging up, Michael joined Lily and Noah at the table where they were drawing again. But these weren't pictures of doors or hallways. Lily had drawn a house with a garden, windows full of light, and a swing set out front. Noah had drawn himself holding Lily's hand, and behind them a taller figure he labeled in careful block letters, Michael. She looked up at him. Are you fighting the bad people? Yes, he said. Are you going to win? He held her gaze, feeling the weight of her question settle into his bones. Yes, he said again, his voice steady and certain. We're going to win, all of us. Because what started as a single act of compassion on a sidewalk had turned into a war, he was willing to give everything to win a war, not fought with weapons, but with truth, courage, and the determination of a man who finally understood he had something worth fighting for again. 6 months later, Michael found himself sitting in a quiet family courtroom in Lower Manhattan, a place where lives weren't argued so much as rewritten. The room was small, sunlit, lined with wooden benches, polished by decades of families holding their breath. Today it was his turn. Lily sat beside him in a pale blue dress, She picked herself, swinging her feet gently, her hand tucked into his. Noah clung to the stuffed bear Michael had bought him the week he moved in, a bear he never went to sleep without. They looked calmer, healthier, fuller. Not healed, not entirely, but blooming in ways only safety allows. Carla sat behind them, hands folded, watching them with quiet pride. Agent Pike and his team were there too, along with Dr. Harris, their therapist, who had guided all three of them through every terrifying memory and hesitant step toward trust. Judge Lorraine Adler entered, a woman in her early 60s with a firm voice and warm eyes. She reviewed the paperwork in front of her, then looked up at the three of them. "Mr. Carter," she began, "I've read through the full file. It's extensive." She paused, almost smiling. "Most people never take on this much work in a lifetime. You did it in less than a year." Michael nodded, the magnitude of that truth settling in his chest. "They've changed me, Your Honor." Judge Adler looked at Lily and Noah. "Children, do you understand why you're here today?" Lily nodded with the quiet confidence she'd earned the hard way. "You're deciding if we get to stay with Michael forever. And is that what you want?" "Yes," Lily said without hesitation. "He's our home now." Noah squeezed his bear and whispered, "I want him to be my dad." Judge Adler's voice softened. "And Mr. Carter, you understand the commitment you are making. These children have endured harm most adults can't comprehend. They will need your patience, your consistency, and your heart for the rest of your life. Do you accept that responsibility I already have?" He said, his voice steady. "They're my kids. I'm not going anywhere." The judge nodded and signed the papers. "In the eyes of the state of New York, you are now a family. Congratulations." Lily let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for years. Noah climbed straight into Michael's lap, arms tight around his neck. Carla wiped her eyes. Even Agent Pike cleared his throat and looked away. When they stepped outside, the sunlight felt warmer than it had in months. But the day wasn't just about his family. It was about every child still waiting to be found. Every child still in the dark corners of a system that had failed them. The Carter Child Protection Initiative had grown faster than he ever imagined. What started as a $50 million investment had become a national coalition of investigators, child advocates, and former survivors trained to help kids transition into safe homes. Willow Creek had been shut down and nearly 24 employees charged. That part of the war was over, but something much larger had begun. Later that afternoon, Michael, Lily, and Noah arrived at the new residential center, the Beacon House, a renovated brick building overlooking the Hudson River. The sound of children laughing spilled out into the courtyard. Dozens of families were gathered for the opening ceremony. Some were foster parents. Some were adoptive families. Some were volunteers who had arrived from across the country after reading the Sentinel's report. And some were children who had survived places like Willow Creek and were finally on the path toward healing. Dana Ruiz was there with her camera crew documenting the ribbon-cutting ceremony for a follow-up piece on national reform efforts. When she spotted Michael and the kids, she lowered her microphone. "You ready?" she asked. "As ready as anyone can be," he said with a small smile. She recorded his speech on the steps of the new center. He didn't talk about money or influence or what he had done. He talked about Lily, about Noah, about the thousands of children who needed more than sympathy. They needed someone to fight for them even when they couldn't speak up. When he finished, families erupted into applause. Lily held his hand tightly. Noah leaned into his side. After the crowd thinned, Lily led him inside the center, tugging him toward a room filled with art supplies and open windows. "Look," she said, pointing at a long table where kids were painting. "They're making their safe place pictures like Dr. Harris taught us." One little girl no older than 6 looked up with eyes that reminded him achingly of Lily on that rain-soaked night. She whispered, "Are you the man who helps kids?" Michael knelt down to her level. "I try to," he said gently, "but I also have help. A lot of help." Lily stepped beside him, lifting her chin with a confidence that still floored him. "We help too," she said. "Me and my brother. We know how scary it is to feel alone." The girl nodded, then reached for a paintbrush. Michael stood up, watching the room fill with colors and laughter and possibility. A year ago, he had been a man drifting through grief, convinced he had nothing left to give. And then, a little girl he'd never met had collided with him on a Manhattan sidewalk and whispered the words that changed his life forever. "Pretend to hug me." But the hug had never been pretend. It had been a beginning, a lifeline thrown to both of them. That night, back home, the 3 of them curled up in the living room. Noah drifted to sleep, first, warm against Michael's side. Lily stayed awake a little longer, watching him with a thoughtful expression. "Michael," she said quietly, "remember when I asked if you were going to win? I remember. You did," she said. "Not just for us. For a lot of kids." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I didn't win alone." She leaned against him, safe, settled, certain in a way that still humbled him. "It started with a hug," she murmured. "A real one." He held both children, closed the room, filled with soft lamplight and the steady comfort of home. And for the first time in his life, he understood something simple and powerful. Some victories aren't loud. Some don't look like triumph. Some are just the quiet, steady sound of children breathing safely in the dark. The hug that was supposed to be pretend had become everything family purpose and a promise he intended to keep for the rest of his life. In the end, Michael's journey was never really about power, money, or influence. It was about a moment, a single trembling whisper on a stormy Manhattan sidewalk that cracked open a heart he thought was permanently closed. When Lily pressed herself into his coat and begged him to pretend to hug her, she unknowingly awakened a man who had been sleepwalking through grief. And he, without realizing it, had stepped into the role she had been desperately searching for, a protector and anchor, and eventually a father. Their story unfolded in ways neither of them could have imagined. What began as an impulse to shield one frightened child became a battle against a broken system that had swallowed too many voices. Noah's fragile silence, Lily's fierce courage, Carla's relentless digging, Agent Pike's determination, and the thousands of children hidden in the shadows, they all pulled Michael deeper into a world he could no longer ignore. And he didn't walk away. He stayed. He fought. He invested everything he had, including the pieces of his heart he thought were long gone. Through their journey, a billionaire learned that true wealth isn't measured in stocks, properties, or influence. It's measured in the lives you lift up and the people you refuse to abandon. A 7-year-old girl learned that not all adults break promises. A small boy discovered that safety isn't a dream, but a place you can actually live in. And a nation learned that corruption can hide behind paperwork and polite smiles, but it cannot survive the truth told fearlessly by those who lived through it. Their story didn't end with the courtroom judgment or with the opening of the Beacon House. It continued each evening when Noah fell asleep without nightmares each morning, when Lily walked into school with confidence instead of fear. It continued with every child the Carter Initiative rescued, every family strengthened, every survivor who found their voice again. Their lives became proof that healing is not about forgetting. It's about rebuilding with people who stand beside you through every storm. And now, the deeper message of their story belongs to you, the audience. If this journey teaches anything, it's that compassion is powerful. Listening is powerful. Taking action, especially when it feels inconvenient or frightening, is powerful beyond measure. You don't need to be a billionaire to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is noticing the person who feels invisible, speaking up when silence feels safer, or offering kindness when someone least expects it. The world changes in small human moments, moments just like that hug on the sidewalk. So ask yourself, where can you make a difference today? Whose life could you touch even in a small way? And what fear, doubt, or grief is holding you back from stepping into the purpose you were meant to claim? Because every one of us has the capacity to turn a moment into a miracle. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about courage, justice, or the quiet battles people fight every day, please consider supporting this channel. Your subscription helps us continue creating meaningful stories that inspire, heal, and empower. Click subscribe, leave a comment, and help us share messages that matter. Your support gives us the strength to bring the next powerful story to life. Thank you for being here and for caring.
If you want this type of stories, then subscribe to Golden Chapter Whispers.